Greetings. Welcome to the 2016 Black Sustainability Summit. This is our last day, Monday, February 1st, 2016, and we are starting it off with Naomi Davis, the president and founder of BIG, Blacks in Green, the Green Village Builders up in Chicago, Illinois. We are so happy to have her here. She's going to be going through her presentation, and we're going to have it up on our site later on today so that you can view it. I'm going to turn over the presenter privileges to Naomi. Naomi, you can begin whenever you are ready. I'm going to mute my microphone. And for those who tune in a little bit later today, please be sure to submit your questions via the chat box or by simply raising your hand with the raise hand option, and I will unmute your microphone when it is time for Q&A. Thank you so much. Naomi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and greetings to you, cousins, wherever you are in this big, wide, wonderful world. Welcome, and blessings and kudos to the fabulous Raina Turner and the Black Sustainability Summit for bringing us together in this very important work. So much love to you, dear. I'm Naomi Davis, founder and CEO of BIG, which stands for Blacks in Green. And I'm coming to you from our headquarters in Chicago, Illinois, USA, where since 2007 we've been building our national and now international network and teaching, coaching, consulting, and implementing the 8 principles of Green Village Building and the 12 propositions of Grannynomics, our signature initiatives. In today's presentation, I'm going to first section will be about background on climate change, our crisis in our culture, and a little bit about my personal journey and how it's brought us to this moment. The second section will be all about green village building, the 8 principles, best practices within those principles, things that you can do and be inspired by. Another, just toward the end, I'm going to have embedded for you 2 highly recommended videos you can watch at your leisure. And then we'll end with how to engage with Blacks in Green. And you'll be able to download pledge and participation forms and some other goodies. And just please take note that BIG is growing. We want any of you who are interested in hosting us in your town, partnering, collaborating, visiting Chicago, joining our board, staff, or committees, please just reach out anytime. I can be reached at 773-678-9541 or at Naomi Davis at blacksandgreen.org. Now, let's uprise. Okay, so the master storyteller, Chinua Achebe, has oft been quoted for this wonderful Nigerian proverb: until the lions learn to ride, the story of the hunt will always be told by the hunters. And so we're leading with a radical suggestion for thinking about development of the land as a hunt. Is this development with or against the pride? We're going to talk about the context of how Chicago and how your town can be a city of villages, how every household in your town could walk to work, walk to shop, walk to learn, or walk to play. And we launched this paradigm, the City of Villages paradigm, back at the 2011 Chicago Ideas Week, where my boys Martin and Malcolm had my back, if you know what I mean. And so onward we go to the experience at a personal level where so many of us have our hearts and have our heritage wrapped up in the work that we do. And so this is just a little bit of my personal story and how I see myself and declare myself in the context of this work is as Naomi Davis, the proud granddaughter of Mississippi sharecroppers, the proud granddaughter who's arrived here in Chicago by way of New York, by way of my southern roots in Mentor City, Mississippi, where everything they ate, they grew, and everything they wore, they made. And like millions of other families in the Great Migration years, voted with their feet, moving up south, as we say, for freedom and economic opportunity. I come from white gloves and mud. I come from Martin and Malcolm. I come from the underground. I come from George Washington Carver and listening to the whispers of the wild. I come from light broke in on me by degrees. I come from a world that works for everyone with no one and nothing left out. I come from work with what's in your hands. I come from, yes, it really is the economy, stupid. Home economics, the first profession for the first economy of your life, which is in your home. I come from follow the money. I come from spinning and salt, and then the British are gone. I come from sweet, sweet potato pie. I come from believing is seeing. I come from I am my vision fulfilled. I come from yes, we can make an oasis wherever we live. I come from a pale blue dot, and cousin, so do you. This is a photograph of the Earth taken from 4 billion miles out in space, the legendary voyage of the Voyager, captured and instigated by the great Carl Sagan. I come from my inner city roots in a tradition that handed down the truth about environmentalism, which is we are the world's original environmentalists. The stories, the traditions, the practices, the love of the land, the wisdom associated with living closely to the land and nurturing it were passed down from great-grandmother to grandmother, from my mother, and landed on me as a child, born and raised in St. Albans, Queens, but aware all throughout my life the stories that my mother told me about growing up in the country, and actually to be finding myself these many years later living 3 blocks away from that American icon where he was born and raised, Emmett Till, who left his tender home at the age of 15 here in West Woodlawn, Chicago, and traveled down south for an innocent summer of family fun, not so far from the place where my mother was born and raised, where he was slaughtered out of the race hate which defines us as a people even to this day. Through the years, we discovered, through the stories that were handed down to us, that there were values which ruled our households and guided our transactions when small was plenty. And over the years, as my mother taught me these lessons, they became the lessons of Grannynomics. And we actually teach it, incorporate it, we work to have our communities, our walkable villages, understand that there's a value in declaring your self-sustainability, and while we are in the urban centers now, as opposed to where these rural roots are coming from, you do know that where you're coming from, when you have these great traditions underneath you, can definitely guide and be a blessing to where you're going. And yet and still, here we find ourselves not so close to these roots and traditions as much as we are in a crisis at the end of an era. How did we get ourselves in the crisis where we find ourselves now as a people? And how can we let where we come from guide us to a higher place that we can be going to? How can we let our strategic planning go beyond the report on the shelf in the booth in the back collecting dust to a 100-year plan? How can we start today working together to build a world of villages? One village at a time, we need to be increasing our selfhood, our self-determination. Now I'm going to shift a little bit here, and just for those of you who want a little bit of background on our planet and on our climate crisis, I'm going to just drill down a little bit and say, in context, yes, Mommy Earth is 4.567 billion years old, and with the last actual extinction event, the big extinction event, happening 65.5 million years ago, when you guessed it, the dinosaurs basically disappeared from the planet. And so we like to remind people that, you know, in the grand spectrum of things, you can look and see our greenhouse gases rising. Actually, you can look at some of the sources, the source material at 350.org, 350 parts per million being that ideal zone of greenhouse gases that are most conducive to human development. We can recognize, though, that since 2007, when Big was born, everyone from corporations to kindergartners were rallying to, quote unquote, save the planet and reduce their carbon footprint. And where we've gone since then is exactly in the opposite direction. In time, in a quicker time that in a time that exceeded the expectations of the world's greatest scientists, that we are now beyond the tipping point. And how do we define the tipping point? That point beyond which we would no longer have a planet similar to the one on which civilization developed and to which life on Earth is adapted. Now, I don't know about you, but I definitely want my grandchildren and great-grandchildren to live on a planet similar to the one that we're living in now. With the climate crisis, however, some of these expectations are not going to be met. Around the world, we recognize that greenhouse gases are increasing at these accelerating rates, and that the more energy we save, the more energy that we use, and that the bottom line is whatever gizmos, technology, science that we come up with, nothing is going to save us except conservation. So living that conservation lifestyle is what this summit is about, what Blacks and Green is all about, and we hope that you'll be educated, inspired, and will share some of your conservation lifestyle wisdom in the ways that we are. Otherwise, what are we down for? We're down for a blazing Earth. This is Earth 2100, a very highly recommended NBC news documentary. You can look it up online. Please look at the story. It's good for families, it's good for schools, it's good for students, and it's good for you, to give you a sense of the bruising that we're cruising for if we don't change our ways. We're acting as if we don't have a single planet to live on, the resources of a single planet. We're acting as if we actually have 4.5 planets to spend. In other words, we're using the Earth's resources 4.5 times faster than they can naturally restore themselves. And if you haven't noticed, somehow thinking that we were going to get on a starship and head out to another planet once we had burned this one up, as if we are all going to go. Because I think you remember that when Katrina hit, some of us could go, and some of us were left behind. Need I say more? So just to wrap this thinking up, please recognize when we talk about saving the planet, we're not really talking about saving the planet. She's cool. She's been everything from a snow cone to a fiery ball, and she's going to be fine. It's we who have got to change our behavior to save our assets. This is the way that we live. We live in a buy it, burn it, trash it cycle that allows us to devalue the value of things and the human capital that went into designing those things. We throw things away. And yes, trash does spontaneously combust. And yes, some people do start their mornings out with breakfast from the dump. And yes, some people's whole villages are built inside of dumps. This is not a world that works for everyone, with no one and nothing left out. And again, when the droughts come, when the infrastructure crumbles, when the social and medical institutions break down, who is going to be hit first and worst? These are, of course, pictures from Katrina. Bottom right-hand corner, the saving grace of what? Formaldehyde-laden residences, temporary residences for the people. How can you trust your government when they save you with formaldehyde? Well, how can you trust the institutions of the world when we have this disposable mentality? Not just disposable of things, but disposable of people. Because for those of you who know our history, we know that Dr. Martin Luther King was called to Memphis in the critical last days of his life in response to the sanitation workers and the support that they needed against corporate practices which were not providing enough safety in the equipment, in their uniforms, in their scheduling, and in the general practices of the company. Just because of this laissez-faire, I mean, and we're talking about Flint today, and back in those days, we were talking about the sanitation workers and how the truck literally chewed up two men in order for us to stand up and say what? I am a man. I am a man. Black Lives Matter. Again, the correspondence between then and now. And here we are today in beautiful downtown West Woodlawn, where the thin dividing line between the wealth of the University of Chicago and the poverty of the disinvested, abandoned, the strategy of spatial deconcentration and how that has played out in the Black community. Literally, we have not, I thought, a very poetic sign right around the corner from the Blacks in Green headquarters, not 4 blocks away from this looming architectural prize, the Logan Arts Center. How do we become this colonized? How do we live in such deep segregation? We want you to remember, again, the climate crisis will be hitting our communities first and worst. 402, that magic number, is the number of is our current greenhouse gas level, our count, with 400, of course, being the tipping point, and 739, the number of souls lost in the heat wave disaster of Chicago back in the 1990s, where most of those lost were people of color, were seniors, and we're recognizing that the isolated lifestyle that we've devolved into is part of the exacerbation of the climate crisis. What we need to have is a full awareness that in this seminal study, and you can come back and review these slides in detail later, or you can go and download the project from the website, the report from the website. It details in no uncertain terms the difference between the effects of the climate crisis on the African American and communities of color versus our others. We know that it is in our self-interest to make sure that we are taking charge of our future. Help is not on the way, and of course, if it does show up, it's likely there to help itself. We want you to recognize that we have an emergency management systems expert, Sergeant Vincent Davis, who works with Blacks in Green, who is very, very clear that when the you-know-what hits the fan, what's going to save us more than anything else, more than your closet full of canned meat, more than your, garage full of bottled water, is going to be our relationships with ourselves. Our network of relationships will be the safety net. And no matter what doomsday scenario you're imagining, Green Village Building, sustainability 1 square mile at a time, wherein you're walking your village, wherein you're connecting neighbors face to face, apartment to apartment, and voice to voice. That will be the salvation that will help you build that bridge to the far shore. I want to also be recommending, in terms of a deep knowledge of the climate crisis and techniques that are recommended at scale for municipalities and for organizations which are working at the level of scale, that you can check into Lester Brown's document. You're going to want to go to these kinds of experts who have done the data, who are properly motivated, and who are going to tell you the truth, whether you like it or not, about the global synchronicity in the conspiracy to poison the planet in the name of profit. Again, we can think about Flint. We can think about how profit over people has been our destruction, but we're going to especially recognize that when it comes to the Black community, we've got a whole system problem common to Black communities everywhere. And of course, in a global conversation like this, we are recognizing that wherever you go in the world, it's not just an accident, it's not just a coincidence, but you have this cross section of problems that you're addressing. Never mind the whole world and that we're all going to go up or we're going to all go down together. The specific afflictions which have been cultivated in our culture revolve around these: malnutrition, addiction, and poisoning, health disparities, self-hatred projected, miseducation, dropouts, and illiteracy, unprepared parenting and state-supported single mother homes, hyper-incarceration, recidivism, violence, barriers to voting, underemployment, unemployment, and the black tax. And we know that the black tax it's just more expensive to live while Black. That is why, in the interest of a whole system solution, and we believe that only a whole system solution can transform a whole system problem, that the 8 principles of Green Village Building are conceived and offered in love as a way to counteract the damage that is synchronistically perpetuating, because the physics of the structural racism and the effects that it's had on us are very precise, scientifically constructed, and able to endure over time with very little new input. Therefore, we have got to be very scientific and also very clever when we think about how to combat it. And again, we're thinking at the system level. So what we are proposing here at Blacks in Green is that we look at ownership of the land, ownership of the businesses, access to the capital to sustain them, and the conservation lifestyle. So what we'll recognize is that many of us of a certain age did live in what we call at Blacks in Green the walkable village, where you could walk to work, walk to shop, walk to learn, walk to play. And you'll see in this presentation the map of my neighborhood, where the dollar signs represent the neighbor-owned businesses within walking distance of your home. Where was your home located? Where was your school located? Where was your church located? All of these within walking distance, so that we could keep the wealth circulating within our communities and fertilizing our wishes, hopes, and dreams, rather than bleeding across town to fertilize the commitments of others. So that's why we have created as one of the foundational sort of exercises in introducing ourselves to this notion of the city of villages and the walkable village, an exercise that helps us begin to understand where we are, reality check with the places where we live right now. And of course, one thing that we say is the place where you sleep isn't the place of your dreams. Baby, honey, child, please pack up, get up, go be where the people you love are, go be where you can have access to water, and go be where, even after you've worked a long day, after your church or school or the needs of family, where you still have a yearning to give one small measure of self to the community where you live. Because if you're not giving something to the community where you live, who should? So on the first page, we ask people to map out, put a little heart where your home is, a little heart where your prized destinations are within walking distance. And what do we say walking distance is? We say, all right, I'm in the middle of my busy day. I need a quart of milk. How far would I walk? Not jump on a bus, not get on my bike, certainly not jump in your car, but how far would you walk? And for most people, after years of kind of experimenting and interviewing, it seems to be like around 4 blocks. I'm not walking any more than that. Other than that, I'm getting on a bike, or other than that, I'm going to get in my car. And so what our hypothesis then is that we can create this concept um, of the walkable village, the sustainable square mile. So sustainability 1 square mile at a time means you're looking at where might the boundaries of your sustainable square mile be? Can you mark them on this chart? Can you place yourself in the context of that sustainable square mile? And then can you write down the assets that you would locate in that sustainable square mile? Doesn't mean that you're quarantined to that square mile. Doesn't mean that you're not going to go and shop other places or work other places or pray other places. It only means that we want to do an assessment that, because on the day that the truck don't come, or on the day that you're flooded out, or the wires are down, or whatever projections that the climate crisis holds in store for us, that you have buffers of resilience against the projected disruptions, that you're able to support and sustain yourself within your square mile if necessary. So on the second side of the page, you would then put recognizing what you have there. Now you're going to recognize what's missing. And this form will help guide you through the process of beginning to envision what your ideal walkable village would look like. So let's see. Got to get our screen back. Uh-oh. Where was our screen?
Is everything okay, Naomi?
Yeah, I just lost my screen. I think when my calendar popped up, it disrupted. Hmm. Um, it'll toggle back up in a minute. Are we paused?
No, I can't pause it once the recording has started. It's just running. But you can continue talking while it's loading
Okay.
back up. Um,
Why don't I do that?
okay.
So that what we recognize about this process is that it begins to reveal for us that there is a practical step-by-step way. There's a practical step-by-step way
Hmm.
to um, to create this vision of self-sustaining Black communities everywhere. And that it will in turn revolve around this local living economy as a greenhouse gas reduction strategy, and that we will be addressing the racial wealth disparity and the circulation of wealth, and that we will actually hone in on a measure for this work called the increase in household income. So if in economic development we find that we are
Right,
not
right.
increasing household income, if we're not increasing household income, what are we doing? If we're in economic development and we're not increasing household income, what are we doing? So we want to make sure that we're not waiting on government. Remember, help is not
No,
on the way.
that's totally out of line. Totally out of line.
There's someone else on the line.
Hold on one moment. We're going to mute her mic.
Okay, and just continuing, um, the idea that we are going to build a network of relationships first. Some of the ways that we can do that will be shown later, but we're going to build relationships through story circles that help us love our cultural legacy. The 8 principles of Green Village Building are designed to be culture specific, but with universal value, and focusing on the conservation lifestyle as the beautiful life and skill as the new money. So just as a little mnemonic, we're talking about neighbor-owned businesses, neighbor-owned property, business incubators, home economics. We need to focus on the first economy, which is the home economy. Household income rising, that circulation of wealth, and yes, it's for rich and for poor. And in the blacks and green paradigm, what we look at is the core functions that we're doing. The core functions are direct action, networking, education, policy, and practice. And what you're looking at here are our bullseyes, how it's evolved over the last several years. Each principle we are activating with a program, and so each principle in our current practice here in our Green Village Building pilot of West Woodlawn has a corresponding program that we're advancing at any given time. What we're going to do now is take a walk through the 8 principles one at a time and give you a sense of uh, what we mean by it, the best practices associated with it, and get your thoughts and feelings about practices that you think would be empowering under these principles. Indeed, your thoughts about the 8 principles generally are encouraged and certainly welcome. So each village has its own exchanges and repositories of wealth. What does that mean? It means that what you say is valuable, as opposed to you inheriting or being foisted upon somebody else's values. Is it your value that you need to have a 4,000 square foot home and a 3-car garage, or is that somebody else's measure of value? Exchanges. How are we transacting? What do we exchange for the value that we want? We are recognizing, of course, that money is just a representation of value. It has no inherent value in and of itself, except that it's backed by a skill of some kind, some resource that you're offering in exchange, one for the other. And repositories, well, I don't know about you, but I'm one of those people who moved my money from the big banks, which targeted and ripped off the black community, to a small uh, black-owned bank as an option. Repositories, where are you putting your money? Where are you holding it? Where are you investing it? So again, we're looking at skill as the new money. What can you do? What are the economics of your home? Believe you me, you know it's true. When your home economy is in peace, the world is at peace. And when it's crazy and raggedy, your world is crazy and raggedy, with all the spill onto others that that entails. How can you, again, transact? Do we need coins, or can we use the time bank? This is a specific system. There are many different ways to do it. Timebanks.org shows you one particular way. Another way that we really like as a distinction is the transitions skills inventory. The Transition Town movement, founded in Tottenham, England, and shout out to Brother Pete Brown in the Pittsburgh area, who is drawing down the wisdom from this system into his Black community and making it real. But the point is this: within your sustainable square mile, what skills do you have? What can people do? Can you make soap? Can you build a house? Can you grow a garden? All of these things are going to be part of the inventory that you're going to want to make sure is well balanced for your self-sustainability. Again, exchanges of wealth. You can have, and they're quite legal, whether most people understand it or not, they're operating successfully around the country today, are local currencies. And the note that's used in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, the most popular of those notes is the $5 note, which bears the likeness of W.E.B. Du Bois. And please do look into and consider a local currency for your micro-saving, lending, local currency under the first principle of Green Village Building. And of course, another system anchored in our culture and heritage is, of course, the SUSU. And shout out to Kesa Mazimoyo, one of the presenters in the Black Sustainability Summit, a good friend, advisor, and mentor who did tremendous work in Atlanta, in the Atlanta area, acquiring 11 homes for cash over 5 or 6 years for 11 different households. We need to be focused on ownership of the land, and if we can do that, of course, after Healing Oppression's Wounds, which is a program which he has created and which he teaches as a precursor to the way that we deal with each other and transact over money, you can't beat it, that collective economics. So one of the things that we've also been working with at Blacks in Green is the idea of a crowdfunding site. We launched one, have some kinks and challenges we're working out. But what about having your own proprietary system, our own proprietary system for raising money? We have created a little app that is still in development, and we are moving ahead to make sure that we're not letting our money in terms of interest rates for the other crowdfunding sites necessarily be lost to the marketplace. We can capture those within. We also want to consider, as part of our wealth building, what's owed to us. We are ashamed, so many of us, to talk about reparations, but it is a bill that is unpaid, and of course, Mr. Coates has expressed it so eloquently for so many of us. We want to make sure that in our towns and villages across the world, we are standing strong in the justification for the money that's owed to us. Would help us do a lot of really great things. Number 2, the second principle of Green Village Building. Each village produces its own energy for heat, light, and transportation. Well, one of our favorite models in this regard is the Power Co-op in Greenfield, Massachusetts. I encourage you to go to their website and look at how they have created a multi-racial, multi-class consortium of community owners of their energy systems. That's solar, biofuel, and Lynn Berlander, who's one of the founders of the organization, can make herself available for coaching and mentoring, and over time has created over 60 jobs in her community through, that's Lynn on the top right corner with the name tag on, and some of her crew. Let's all look at how our neighborhoods can support themselves in our energy needs. It's not going to happen overnight. We didn't get into this trouble overnight. We're not going to get out of it overnight. But here in Chicago, we're very blessed to have the Chicago Environmental Justice Network, led in part by Kim Wasserman Nieto, a Goldman Prize winner for 2013, I think. And what we are doing here in Illinois, which many of you are probably doing in your states around the country, is having a negotiation on the crafting of legislation around what's called here the Clean Jobs Bill. And how does your utility define a good community result versus how you and the environmental justice community where you live define good results. In many cases, the big greens, what we call those large environmental organizations who typically get all the heat and light, speak for us. Are we letting the big greens speak for us, or are we at the table making the negotiations for the transitions to renewable energies where we live? Where the railroads are concerned, a major, major source of potential wealth and an important part of the economy and an important factor in the pollution of our neighborhoods, where, of course, we've already seen how there's a disproportionate negative impact in communities of color from pollutants associated with industry, and how those will trigger higher rates of asthma, which means more emergency room visits, which means more classroom days lost, more jobs days lost. And this cascading field of negatives are something that we just bear, for the most part, silently, and we're expected to bear them. But there are, again, in the same sense of reparations, there are fees owed to us. There are services owed to us. There are jobs owed to us, and careers and contracts owed to us from the extreme wealth generated by the railroad industry, which is in a field of its own in terms of its sense of entitlement in the country. Let's bring that into a more holistic context. Okay, so the third principle of Green Village Building: each village supplies all basic goods and services to neighbors, converting waste to wealth in the process. Have you been able to develop your waste system in your walkable village so that you're making value out of the waste? We know that we're talking about skills. Okay, everybody knows Martha Stewart, and she could, drop her out of a helicopter in a desert and she'll have dinner for 8 and 2 hours. But we have assets that don't look like Martha Stewart. They may look more like Precious. They may be more 300 pounds, third grade education with 3 kids. But these are our people, and they have profound value, any more than the little colored ladies in Gee's Bend, Alabama, had extraordinary value that the world didn't recognize until one day they recognized it with those magnificent quilts that they build. We are master artisans. We know how to make beautiful stuff. And whether we're in a dirt floor in Colombia making rugs which sell for thousands, or pottery, or whether we're making furniture, or whether we are creating food products, we have the skills that we need within our walkable villages to thrive. In the lower center, you'll see the pedal people out of Massachusetts, who find a way to make enterprise out of handling their own waste. And the idea that we are taking, this is a shot from our sustainability teaching garden with our chief gardening officer, Dwayne Jarrett, in the background with the gray hair, and one of our young volunteers from Illinois Institute of Technology in the foreground, and our soil expert, Nancy Clem, in the background. We are building a soil center where we are among other things, taking our food scrap from the neighborhood and building it into our compost system. We are making sure that we are keeping a closed, working toward keeping a closed loop of waste and converting that waste to wealth. Soil is one of the most important things that civilization relies on. And for the fourth principle, continuing this theme associated with soil, is each village is sustained through jobs-driven development without displacement, providing low-income housing and producing high-quality food through land trust CDCs, and that's community development corporations. What does that mean? It means that we are looking at how to create a framework within our sustainable square mile. In West Woodlawn, we created it. We created a framework that we call the West Woodlawn Botanic Garden and Village Farm Initiative. How could we take the nature, the tradition, the culture, the sort of what wanted to happen in this place, the unique character of this place, and amplify it so that we could build relationships and build wealth? Well, what we did was we created this initiative to answer these four questions. How many households could we feed? How many neighbors could we train and engage? How many jobs or businesses could we create? And how many gallons of stormwater could we divert? And so in the context of looking at the whole sustainable square mile, have produced our first Homesteaders Fair, where we, and there's Granny at the bottom. Hey, Granny. Where we are looking at how to call our children home back to the hood. We want that next generation of African Americans to come in, settle in, and contribute to the renaissance of this place. And so in this kind of Homesteaders Fair, we are inviting all of those, that whole supply chain of place making, the lenders, the architects, the landscapers, the artisans, and putting them in a place where, you know, neighbors can enjoy on an ongoing basis, on an annual basis, the good news about how to renovate a residence, buy a building, and grow a garden. Again, asking those basic questions. How can we get together and answer them? And when we put together this plan, we put it together with a progression of years in mind. The year of the tree canopy, looking at how we could take our commercial corridors and get them replanted, our parkways and getting those replanted. How could we create a critical mass conversation for the backyard garden? And just really generally educating our community about what is a food system. We have in Illinois, we export 94% of the food that's consumed comes from outside of the state, and we're locked into this old paradigm, this big ag paradigm of, you know, using our very fertile, rich farmland for the production of corn and soy. Well, that's old model and doesn't work, but how do we bring this new, the old traditional, the best of the traditional agriculture into the present? One of the things that we've lovingly done is adopt the Bible of our First Lady Michelle Obama. If you haven't seen this resource, it's got maps for each of the seasons for things to grow. We talk about eating seasonally, things you can grow all 4 seasons of the year. The history of the Victory Garden, that's particularly relevant for the walkable village where we live here in Bronzeville, the southernmost tip of Bronzeville, home of Lorraine Hansberry, Emmett Till, and that great upsurgence of artists, writers, gardeners, healers, and builders that we're so proud to refer. Well, everybody knows about the contribution of George Washington Carver, but how do we inculcate that? How do we get that into the bloodstream of our neighborhoods today? Back in the day when I grew up in St. Albans, Queens, and this is pretty much a pretty representative icon for what life was like in the neighborhood back then, the school, the nuclear family. How do we translate the best of those old traditions into today? In the walkable village, as I said, where I grew up, you'll see that those dollar signs on those on the yellow streets, which are our commercial corridors, were our neighbor-owned businesses. And as a child, when my mother was doing her fundraising, her particular passion was the United Negro College Fund and the HBCU schools. All she had to do was make a phone call and send her little daughter down to Linden Boulevard or wherever to pick up the envelopes of these vendors who had the self-interest of the community in mind and wouldn't dare say no to giving a part of their good measure for the advancement of the next generation. Do we have vendors, merchants, industries in our neighborhoods now who can be relied on for that kind of commitment and that goodwill? Do we have these kind of neighbor-owned businesses in our commercial corridors? This is less than a generation or not more than 1.5 generations ago. Here where I live in West Woodlawn, Chicago's tight little island, it was Chicago's first black middle-class neighborhood, and what we are wanting to point your attention to here is, basically, all right, it doesn't look like a square, but it is our sustainable square mile. And gutted with foreclosures, vacant lots, and otherwise zombie properties that have just called out a whole new low in our experience of ourselves as citizens in America. This happens to also be a TIF district, so while it has so much in common with the glory days of the past with the neighborhood where I grew up, it also shares the destiny that befell so many of our African American communities across this country that I know of that have fallen into decay. This is what our walkable village looks like from an aerial view. Looking south from the loop is north, and the 60th Street boundary there, right where the A is in Chicago, is where we're located, right across from a 400-acre Frederick Olmsted landmark park, just to the west of the University of Chicago. And again, that thin dividing line of Cottage Grove between rich and poor, between have and have not. It's amazing and can cause despair to recognize how structurally efficient the racism was that had one side of that line live like one in one way and one side of the line live in another way. But to be proactive, we have taken our walkable village and divided it into 9 zones that we are working with zone by zone to develop 3 co-captains per zone who will not yet but soon be stipended to be the stewards of their zone, and it's about 6 blocks per zone where they can receive our stipend, receive specific horticultural training through a series of our partners, including the Chicago Botanic Garden, including the Nature Conservancy, and Angelic Organics Learning Center. There are many agricultural allies that we have at our disposal to work with. The point being that we want our land stewards to be cultivated right where they live, so that the idea that there's going to be external help coming in. There are a lot of good organizations doing citywide horticultural or agricultural work, but how much more efficient and how much more pride-producing when we have those when we have that talent within our walkable village. And so as we look at those 3 co-captains per zone, how they would be accountable for the stewardship of the land in that place, for recruiting and organizing neighbors to be a part of that process, and all together recognizing the future forward careers in horticulture, from getting your hands dirty in the ground to getting your hands wet in a laboratory. All of these are on the spectrum that we introduce. Again, this is the shape of our walkable village. This is the context that we have it within the Green and Healthy Neighborhood process, which was a land use process, which was instigated by the for 2 years. These other 3 zones were officially adopted by the city. Ours was not. Nevertheless, you don't wait on the city or government or anyone else to approve you. You just get busy and do what you can. Start with what's in your hand, as Adam Clayton Powell exhorted us. A very important part of the programming that we're working on right now is to negotiate with the city for the acquisition of city-owned lands for the development by Black developers for the Black middle class. And you can see on this map that the green and purple pieces there are the city-owned land that was conveyed to was put on the market for $1 to neighbors who lived on that same block. Now, we just loved that program. Had a couple of beefs with it, and some things that we would tweak about it. Have held focus groups about what worked and what didn't work. The city is doing this initiative in communities, in select communities, Chicago, communities of color, and because the neighbor investor is the very most important thing that we can establish in our communities, bar none. Because we have been the victims of this structural racial wealth disparity, and the mechanisms that prevent our inheritance of land one generation to the next, we've got to really step up at this point and make sure that we are getting that land. And so what we're happy to report is that we're in negotiations right now. We have a consortium of Black developers we're working with. We're expecting to be able to begin with as many as 7 properties this year and next. And you must understand, as the destination for where the presidential center is coming, that's the museum, the library, and the foundation, is either going to be located right in that park, right across the street from where Blacks and Green is headquartered, or a mile down the road at the other park that is on the other side of the University of Chicago. Either way, there has been a glut, and you know all about displacement by gentrification. We have investors from London to Kuwait snapping up the properties in our neighborhoods right now, and because of the wealth disparity, we will never be able to compete with those dollars. But what we can do is insist that our municipalities work with us to help level the playing field by returning some of those properties back to the Black community that, let's face it, many of them were lost through unfair foreclosures and other wealth frailties associated with our community that were structurally imposed. So to just move ahead with the idea that you can take your sustainable square mile. Where's your sustainable square mile? What's the history of it? What's the culture of it? What's the special character of it? What are the boundaries of it? In this case, because we know that our mayor is focused heavily on cultural tourism, because we know, Black culture is one of the most coveted things on the planet. Why shouldn't we be creating receptacles and destinations that will generate our economy to flourish through the kinds of ways that tourists spend their money. In this scenario, we have envisioned how the main commercial corridors could be cultivated. We're not in charge of anything. We're very active on the ground, talking to neighbors and talking with government and talking with developers. We are that bridge and that catalyst to for a higher way forward in the development of the Black community. This is just one way that we see ourselves flourishing in this place. With respect to the kinds of wealth that can be produced through this kind of food system economy, we've produced this chart that just gives you some kind of ideas of the kinds of the types of businesses that could that would be necessary and that could flourish in a place in a sustainable square mile. We've done food surveys to check out the preferences, the shopping habits, the needs, the gaps of our community, and we are teaching as we go to let people know that this whole system, this food system economy, you know, it's just common sense, it's real world, it can work to produce real jobs if we work it. And so in terms of our cultivation of the land, we have a sustainability teaching garden and we have a fruit and nut orchard that we've installed. Both of those, well, the fruit and nut orchard was new last year. We have these designs done by our chief gardening officer, who's also an Art Institute graduate. Just met him knocking door to door. Again, you got to get out and walk your village. You got to flyer your village. You got to meet your neighbors. There is no substitute for walking your village. No matter how many times you've driven down your street or how slowly you do it, you're going to have a whole new experience of the place where you live by looking at people from the ground level. This is a depiction of the co-housing unit that we are planning to build. The other half of our property is the fruit and nut orchard where we've now planted 40 trees. We've got another 60 or so trees that we've planted in the parkway, part of that green infrastructure process that I was describing, and hoping to have all of you and more come and join us to here in Chicago for a weekend in the Witty City. Might we get together and discuss green village building at a summit here over a Labor Day weekend, which is our annual celebration at African Festival of the Arts, Chicago's largest neighborhood festival, 250,000 people coming in over the 4 days. And of course, we relish the idea of collaborating with the Black Sustainability Summit in moving our mutual ideas to the next level. Again, our walkable village began as a concept with drawings and again by our chief gardening officer, and we have had as I've stated, decades of blight. This is what our garden looked like when we started. It had been like that for 30 years, cars parking, dog poop, and over the years, yes, we are dog lovers in this neighborhood, we have just gone ahead and with some generous in-kind donations and with our summer youth employment program, where we are able to enjoy the labor of high school students from our City of Chicago Summer Youth Employment Program. We have been able to, and of course our dedicated neighborhood cultivators, we have been able to put in a garden that has just awakened the spirits of the neighbors in ways that they're like, oh yes, great things are possible. Yes, we can do for self. Yes, we are able to make an oasis wherever we live against whatever odds. And so what we are pointing to here is that the traditions of littering, which, you know, we live in a very broken place. This series of slides represents the orchard that we put in, trash that we bagged up, trash that we had yet to bag up, trees that we just had cut down. This is the condition. Yes.
Oh, excuse me. This is Raina. I just wanted to give you a note that we are approaching a 30-minute mark
Okay.
presentation. Just
So 30 minutes left.
correct.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And so here we are looking at the condition that we live in, and what we have to embrace. It's not anybody's job to keep us thriving. It's our job. So our ability to again find the resources, find the teams. This was the day that we planted our first 40 trees, our first 40 trees with the help of neighbors and allies. We are continuing to build on that with college students, as well as even our seniors who live next door. They'll bring out the coffee or the water and the snacks and find a way to participate. Our young men are extremely important to us, and without their willingness to be taught and mentored, our shorties are also involved in the process. We would not be able to get work done. So converted from a garbage dump to a site where families do picnic. Again, um, not waiting for government or the grant or whatever types of resources we think are necessary. Sometimes we are able to move our progress. And in this space, which used to be a garage, also donated by our landlord, we have a maker space that we are using to create 16 sculptures for our 16 Great Migration Gardens. And one of the things that we are focusing on in our push for the garden is the need to have backyard gardens and the need to have a system for putting backyard gardens into the apartment buildings where we live. And this shows our process of taking our limestone border, our cardboard and plastic barriers for soil protection, our twigs and leaves and branches, part of that system of creating a really rich, strong bed and adding in our compost. It is 3 years now into the garden, and at this point, we definitely have, sort of a growing neighbor interest beyond the point of spectator. We have our neighbors here participating in the harvest. And this is what every neighborhood really needs to do, is advocate for a critical mass of gardens in their walkable village. These are some of our Black developers in our Black Developer Consortium. We're very concerned about the demolition of properties and the ownership of properties, where we discovered through our own interns, we did a 6-month study of who owns West Woodlawn, and we were not happy to find out how little ownership, what a small percentage of ownership actual residents had in the neighborhoods where they live. And getting back to, again, this opening premise that there is a hunt for, that development of the land is a hunt, and it's either for or against the pride. We need equity, not colonialism. So don't give us an affordable apartment. Let us develop our own properties and give us the access to the capital that we deserve in order to own, develop, and manage the properties in our community. Let us understand, this is another great study for you to tap into, to understand the mechanisms of structural wealth disparity. We have done our own programs, research, and presentations. This is one at the University of Chicago, which talked about the racial wealth disparity here in Chicago, and how the collusion between the sellers, the realtors, the appraisers, the the brokers, the judges, everyone was colluding in the process to rob our communities of their wealth. This is a sample of another sort of measure that is being promoted now to judge whether organizations are really just. Another great toolkit for looking at gentrification, neighborhood change. A lot of universities and organizations like this perfectly healthy, useful study, practical guides such as these will be able to will be able to guide us. So where community benefits are concerned, we definitely want to look at the West Harlem Community Benefits Agreement, which are they're useful for us to see that that even though Harlem went from 90% black to 30% black, we have a way of negotiating sovereignty and compensation for around our losses. This particular CBA started with $76 million on the table and a whole spectrum of supports associated with Columbia University's expansion. We're experiencing the same kind of expansion at the University of Chicago, but not with the same kind of commitment to equity. And so how are we moving in the world today? We are famous for recognizing the value of the mountaintop, but suffering the effects of the removal. The system of spatial deconcentration, what we call rape and rescue, is more the rule than the exception. And how do we work through dismantling those policies at the structural level, but while also not waiting for government to find God and do the right thing, but again to let the greater good happen through our own sovereignty practices. We are tearing down our cities and rebuilding them, and the result is that we're getting displaced in stunning ways. If you just look at these cities where the lowest priced property has become some of the highest priced property, Seattle, New York City. This is the percentage of gentrification that we're seeing in these cities. And when we force people out, where do they go and into what quality of life? The idea that we must love ourselves is represented through the 8 principles of Green Village Building, principle number 5, which is about celebrating our past, present, and future culture through stories in print, digital, and theatrical form. And so how do we, of course, theater is well known as a way to open the hearts and minds of people to a higher way forward. We produced Migration the Musical as one way to build on the self-love that is necessary for us to be sovereign and be prosperous. We started by producing story circles in 6 of the different churches within our square mile. We cultivated the stories. We presented them with music and dance, and with a supper with wine at the DuSable Museum of African American Heritage and Culture. We've taught the 8 principles of Green Village Building at the University of Chicago Center for the Study of Race, Politics, and Culture, as a course, open enrollment course for community activists. We are continually producing culture-specific programming. Here again, referencing Mississippi, but mixing it with today's cultural and musical paradigm. For a Grannynomic Development Jam, we have food and we have music and we have dance and we have training in the new green economy. Again, we have undertaken to highlight our culture as part of this building the new green economy, because all of these things can also be done for economic development purposes. Each village is a walkable, self-sustaining whole with perceptible borders, interdependent local ties, global context, here we go globally, organized and in action for self-interest. We cannot afford to be moving willy-nilly. Again, the time bank is an example of organizing. It's asset mapping and moving for a specific financial or other specified results. Skill, banking, indexing, and deploying your skills in ways that will build community wealth. This is a chart that shows just some ways that you could break down your village database. You want to have a database in Excel or whatever program you use where you can easily sort and identify who your constituencies are by group. And of course, where all important real estate is concerned, we have begun to and recommend that everybody look at the supply chain for their commercial, industrial, and residential property ownership so that we can be building the capacity of neighbors to own, develop, and manage the property in their neighborhood. Neighbor, investor, all important. And of course, running for office. And here I am running for committeeman in the 20th Ward where I live a few years ago. Didn't win, but stunned them with 41% of the vote in a short campaign with a little bit of money and a very small team. And, people, it is, of course, a double-edged sword. Legislators feel threatened, but you use your power, use your vote. Of course, there's blood on it. We died for it, and we absolutely have to press into the power. What did Frederick Douglass say? Concedes nothing without a struggle, never has and never will. Here we are pictured struggling around the Obama Presidential Center and the University of Chicago for community benefits. We have presented specific areas of focus that we are looking to negotiate around. Unfortunately, the University of Chicago tends to think about their community benefits as declared rather than negotiated, and so it's an ongoing fight for what we say we need, not great uncle giving us the gift that he thinks that we should want. Again, part of our organizing is coming together at African Festival of the Arts and presenting the issues with our partners in a celebratory way, but in a highly strategic way. Here we are taking this fight on community benefits. That panel that you see there is the core team moving this conversation. Wherever you're playing or praying or working or whatever, you can be bringing these conversations. This is the kind of programming that we produce over the 4 days of the festival. And again, we encourage you to come down and be with us for a Windy City weekend. The seventh principle around each village fosters lifelong learning through hubs, which are epicenters for green training, development, and lifestyle transformation. This location right here in the neighborhood where the shutters are down is where, because we had no other option, we ended up producing our launch for our Green Village Building initiative. Whether it's a university or whether it's a church or whether it's a grocery store and hair salon, you can use what you've got to get what you want. This is the educational curriculum as we've been marketing it over the years, and we have a very specific intention to use the what they call the schools as centers of communities approach, even in the face of them closing our schools. The relationship dismantling and the dysfunction that spirals out of that, I think we're becoming, well, all too familiar with. In spite of it all, find your place, put up your sign, open up your doors, no matter what kind of place it is. We do need that third place in our communities where we can convene, share our messages, and be in the process of healing, whether we're indoors or whether we're outdoors. Please do remember that as we are fighting, as we are struggling, that we have got to make sure that we are on the land, in the land, of the land, being aware of our profound connection to the land, whether we are growing food or just walking in the forest. In this little section right here, I'm going to be sharing with you an allies document, which will help some of us who are dealing with well-intended others who are wanting to help us, and helping them find the appropriate role in the process of being a supporter. Where education is concerned, this is a very old chart back during the time when Blacks in Green was founded, which is holding true today. We're just now beginning to launch the smart grid with ComEd. All of these technical careers are careers that we can be organizing our young people and our mid-career people to be working in. Again, careers to watch, an old chart, but something that continues to hold true today for our opportunities for survival. And the last principle of green village building: each village circulates its wealth through neighbor-owned businesses, critical here, which invent, invest, manufacture, and merchandise locally. So whether you're a worker-owned cooperative, such as the ones that have been well established in Cleveland, Ohio, the Evergreen model, where Blacks in Green is about to launch our own worker-owned nursery to help manage the community land trusts that we're developing with the land that we're acquiring. Worker-owned is a great way to establish and amplify wealth. Again, the neighbor-owned business versus the chain. These are studies that you can refer to, and we'll have those deep documents available for you to download that shows the data around the positive impact of neighbor-owned businesses, locally owned businesses versus chains, the multiplier effects, and the recirculation of neighbor wealth through the supply chains associated with the businesses. Again, we are not waiting for government to come to our rescue. Eldridge Cleaver had it so right, and so many of us are part of the solution. And just to keep it simple, we know that everything that we really need to know, we learned a long time ago about how to treat each other. We know that, as Dr. King has exhorted us, we either all go up together or we all go down together. This other dude that you may not know, Sir Gaylord Nelson, founder of Earth Day, has nailed it, that the economy is a wholly owned subsidiary of the environment. There is nothing other than the resources of planet Earth, and it circumscribes everything else. Again, if they come for me in the morning, they will come for you in the night. Whether you are black, white, a scholar, or a revolutionary, many of us in the field have recognized that we must stick together. And this is an important documentary that I indicated at the beginning was embedded for your enlightenment and at your leisure. another one, this T.D. Jakes sermon, without regard to what your religious persuasion is, this Rainmaker sermon nails it, I think, about being inspired to action. And so again, in conclusion, hear ye, hear you. We are the lions writing the story of the hunt. And we are remembering that nature always bats last. It will have the last word. Many of us aren't going to be able to get away. Keep Katrina in mind. 10 years afterwards, there is still extreme loss and displacement. What our mayors and managers aren't telling us is killing us. And we do need to have these emergency management skills. We're answering the call and the question, where is your village? Where is your village? Your sustainable square mile. And we're recognizing that only a whole system solution can transform the whole system problem common to Black communities everywhere. And we're declaring, for sure, what's good for the African diaspora is good for everyone. And what's bad for the African diaspora is bad for everyone. And we understand that you can't manage what you can't measure. And we promise you cannot have climate justice without economic justice. And we are a witness that where there is no vision, the people will perish. And that, yes, we can make an oasis wherever we live. I thank and I just welcome your input and your participation. As I said, BIG is growing, and we demonstrated over our 7-8 years that we can make a way out of no way. We've been an all-volunteer team, and building our walkable village and teaching and lecturing around the country. Please connect with us. Here are 9 things that you can do today. These are all going to be downloadable sheets that you can fill in and send back. The Miracle of Technology, as translated by Raina Turner, has been magnificent in bringing us together, and we hope that you will continue to engage with us and recognize that there is something of value that we can generate out of creating these sustainable square miles. We are counting on you to come and visit us or replicate what we're talking about. Contact us for coaching or mentoring. We encourage you to come here, come by here, come live here, come settle here. We want you to be a part of this breakthrough walkable village community where you can walk to work, walk to shop, walk to learn, and walk to play, and be a leader in the higher way forward for the Black community. We're encouraging you, asking you, and imploring you to take the pledge and endorse or adopt Green Village Building, and send this form back to us. Subscribe to the City of Villages. Value this walkable village. Imagine and see the sustainability 1 square mile at a time, and support the local living economy. I want to end with a prayer for the ancestral spirits, and I thank you for being the people, my people, who recognize that God is at work with and through us. I offer this prayer to you as a bridge between our mother country, the American experience, and all of our diaspora, from Russia to Greenland to Japan to South America and beyond, that we are a connected people. Receive this prayer in the love that it's offered. And please remember to, as you're working, citing, using, and recommending, our citations are specific and they are listed below, and we ask that you use them as conceived. Stay courageous, my beloved friends and cousins. Remember our ancestors. We're big because you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi. A very, very, very magnificent presentation. I think it's very important for us to um, recognize that as we talk about sustainable communities, some of us may approach it with a startup and build in another place or space, repatriating, which is definitely a magnificent option. I wouldn't even just say option, but a magnificent journey to go on. But for those that are looking to remain and to build where we are and to continue upgrading our neighborhoods where we are because we are tied to family. That's something that we definitely always impress upon the importance of family. If your family is not interested in repatriating, what can you do while you're still here? And how can you do it in the best way to remain sustainable? So I give thanks for your presentation and for offering up such a magnificent option for those of us that are going to remain here in the States, regardless of wherever we are across this geographic space. There are questions um, that have come up, and I would like to let everybody know we started early. I put it in the chat, but it was so that we could capture all of Naomi's presentation and upload it at the end of this session before we go into our next presenter. So you'll have an opportunity to go back and review all of what Naomi covered, regardless of what point that you came in on. I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor for questions. Ikena, I see that you are here and have your hand up. Then I'm going to Erlene. I'm not sure if she has a microphone um, or not, but I will take the question. Ikena, your microphone is unmuted.
Great, great. Happy risings and thank you. So I missed part of the presentation, and I apologize if I'm asking her to repeat something that was covered. But can you tell me about the diaspora crowdfunding project and purpose? I just saw that on one of the slides.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well, many of us see the GoFundMe or the Kickstarter or any of a number of specialty crowdfunding systems that have sprung up over the last several years. And it occurred to us in looking at the various terms and conditions for participating. And by the way, crowdfunding, although it is certainly a great idea and a tool that you should have in your toolbox, a way um, of receiving funds from a wide spectrum of contributors through the digital space of the internet. While it is definitely a tool that you should have, it's not something that's easy to do. You just put your request out and then you just sit back and watch the money come in. We did a lot of research. One of our board members at the time was one of the nationally recognized experts in crowdfunding, and a master's in finance from the University of Chicago, and with an undergraduate degree in economics. So it was not with blind faith that we walked into the process of looking at the crowdfunding tool as one for us. What we noticed is that, and I have no criticism of the prevailing rates in the marketplace, in the crowdfunding marketplace, but the percentages range anywhere from 3% to, maybe 10%, depending on the percentage that you will pay to the crowdfunding host. Depending on whether you are, they have basically two kinds of ways you can play the game, that you either raise your money that you've targeted, the sort of the all or nothing approach, and if you don't raise your target, you don't get any of the money, it goes back to the givers, or the take what you get approach, which is you set your target and whatever you make, you get. Obviously, the percentage for the latter is higher because it's easier to meet. The percentage for the former is lower because it's harder to meet. So, what we thought was that it would be beneficial for the Black community to own its own crowdfunding platform. And at the time, there were several brothers out of D.C., some Ivy League brothers who started up a website They had, a chunk of funding from the financial community. They had financial backgrounds. It didn't pan out, and I'm not aware at this time of there being another Black-owned crowdfunding platform. Pray that there is. Certainly, our commitment is to be one. It's not something that you can do on a shoestring. We're needing. What we found is that what we set out to do was appropriate, and there's a market for it, but we needed more funds for our technology. So we're still at the drawing board on that. In the meantime, we created an app, which is also still in development, and that app includes a way to tap into or attract or otherwise direct potential contributors to your crowdfunding campaign, but it's also a way to look at where is your village, looking at plugging in your address and coming up with a suggested square mile walkable village for your green village building work. So whether you're using a computer-based or an internet-based crowdfunding system, whether you're using it on your phone or whether you're using it on your computer, we're just recommending that Black people have their own, so that those fees that we have to pay, and you have to pay them, and they're fair to pay them, that money comes back to our community. Does that make sense?
Yes, it certainly does.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, I was expecting a different answer, so this was very good, very informative.
Oh, good. If you want more information, or if you want more, again, Naomi Davis, 773-678-9541, or Naomi Davis at blacksandgreen.org. So we're just available as a resource, as a partner. Again, we all go up together or we all go down together.
Wonderful. I see that Arlene does not have a microphone, but if you have a question, go ahead and type it in and I will read it out loud for you. For anybody else who has a question, please submit your question in the, you can type it in the question box, or you can send it in the chat and we'll read it out loud. You can go ahead and raise up your hand if you'd like for me to unmute your microphone. I'm muting you back as well. The presentation will be available for those of you who did not get an opportunity to view it prior to tuning in. Does anybody else have a question? Well, it seems as though people are listening in. I would like to go ahead and unmute the microphones and have people introduce themselves and share a little bit about what they were hoping to gain from today. And then we can close out the session and I will post up the recording and you all can watch it all the way through and then submit your questions in the same manner that I've asked for every single session. That is to go to blacksustainabilitysummit.com, go underneath schedule and follow the instructions down at the bottom of the page to get in contact with Naomi if you did not write down her contact information, which will be at the beginning of the video. And Naomi, you can actually give it right now at this time before I unmute the microphones.
The contact information?
Yes.
Okay, I can be reached at blacksandgreen.org. That's the website, www.blacksandgreen.org, or by email at naomidavis@blacksandgreen.org, or direct to me at 773-678-9541. And I welcome your calls and contact and outreach.
Wonderful. Arlene simply sent in a comment that said this was so awesome in all caps. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Very inspiring.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to unmute the microphones and you all can be just very brief. Just introduce yourselves and share a little bit about what brought you here and what you're looking to gain.
Hello out there. Where are you? Talk to me.
Rashida, Morgan, Elaine. Anybody with a microphone? I've unmuted them. I'm not sure if they're right at their computers.
Don't be shy. And of course, if you
Okay, greetings. I had muted myself. This is Ikena Ubaka in Atlanta, Georgia. And like Erlene said, this has been awesome. I will be going back to hear the full presentation. I came in to hear specifically about youth involvement in the sustainability movement, and the portions that you presented are outstanding. So I'm going to look at studying your model. I'm a youth development specialist and doing work here in Atlanta, and I'm very interested in doing work on the continent with youth and working with models that are already in place and effective makes the most sense to me. So thank you for all the work that you've done, and I see that when you're available. So I look forward to connecting.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. I'll listen out.
Anyone else? Elaine, there's a question that just came through. I'll read it. Erlene's introduction. I'm Erlene Wilson Huey from Albany, Oregon. I was also interested in learning about your work with youth also.
Okay, well, you know, one of the things that we have going here in the hood is a spectacular level of violence that you know, you are hearing about it. It is true. I think one of the things that Raina noted recently is that even though it's true, there are lots of counterbalances in real time that make this a beautiful place to live. I want to say that so our youth, they include those who were represented, for instance, recently at the ComEd Black History Month launch that we curated Saturday, the January 30th, where we had about 25 high school students in the room. Maybe 33%, maybe about a third of them already had some interest in technology, whether it was the smart grid or whether it was solar particularly, and another 3 or 4 who found some interest in the day of activity. So one of the things that we are specifically, so one of the ways that we're specifically engaging youth right now is through a pipeline that we are developing with our utility company, which here in Chicago is ComEd, to keep those students in a pipeline of interest with mentors, activities, programs, and opportunities to be shadowing on the jobs and doing interning, paid and non-paid, and really using the opportunity for measuring with numbers and numbers of students and salaries of students and what we actually produce through this engagement, because so much of what happens unfortunately is token, and we know that it's hard. One of the jobs that I do is with an alternative high school, and that in Chicago, the model means that it's the some of the poorest, most dysfunctional. They're raising themselves on the street. They're not getting proper nutrition. They don't have a culture of appreciation of education in the homes that they come from. Every dysfunction you can imagine, sexual molestation, et cetera, et cetera. These are a growing population in our schools. And yet, as I've mentioned about that precious model, they are ours too. And they belong to us, and we have a duty to steward them. And so one of the things that I'm doing in that context is, and I don't know if you've heard of this curriculum, Roots of Success. Roots of Success is an environmental literacy curriculum that I'm certified to teach, have been teaching off and on for 7 years or so. It is specifically designed for more difficult students, those phasing in and out of the criminal justice system, those with social dysfunctions as well as health dysfunctions. You know, again, Flint, the lead. Lead will make you crazy, stupid, and dead as sure as you're born. And we've got a lot of our young babies out there who are suffering from the effects of that kind of poisoning. And again, yet they're ours. But what we love about the Roots of Success curriculum, and you can find it online, Roots of Success, is that it is very hands-on. It has a lens or a way of bringing the student into the moment, into their lives, into their households, into their communities, with activities and perspectives that allow them to feel like a winner and produce concrete projects and results. So again, whether it's Roots of Success or whether it's, you know, a curriculum that we're designing with our utility company, in other words, career destination oriented, or whether we're working with our high school and young college students over the summer as part of our horticorp. We're training those students in the landscaping and agricultural arts. We you know, they often come in dragging and moaning, I don't want to do none of that slavery stuff, and leave, you know, feeling like, wow, look what I did. And so we're working similarly to pipeline those students who express an interest or express a special talent into training programs of our allies. We have an extraordinary program, the Windy City Harvest Program, cultivated by the Chicago Botanic Garden, which is a rigorous curriculum, but where you can come out with a with an opportunity there's some supports that they offer for you to start as an entrepreneur, as an agricultural entrepreneur. So if you want to talk to me about any of those programs, or if there's any way that I can support or foster your youth programming in the new green economy, I'm just delighted to do that.
Thank you so much, Naomi. Let me see if there's anybody else that has questions. A hand went up. Ikena, I'm going to unmute your microphone. All right, you are live now for Q&A.
Hey there.
Oh, no, my question was already addressed. I probably didn't use that hand raise button properly.
Oh, okay. Let me, I'll mute you back again. Let me see if Erlene had another question. I see a question came up. Let's see. Oh, it was just a comment saying thank you. I believe everybody has asked their questions. I'm going to go ahead and process and upload the video at the time, the presentation. Naomi, I can't thank you enough for a magnificent presentation. I know everybody will be tuning in and watching, and be sure to reach out to her directly or email blacksustainabilitysummit@gmail.com if you have any lapse in memory or you can't find it, and we will forward her contact information on to you to put you in direct contact. We're going to get prepared for our next presentation. I hope that you all enjoy the video, enjoy the presentation, and stay connected. Naomi, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Bless you. Love you so much. Bye now.
Love you too. Goodbye.